Logan's junkyard. Let's see what he's doing. One of those like Blair Witch style movies, but mid-Ohio. Gotta ask a bunch of dumb questions. So Logan, how much horsepower?
Lots of horsepower. So much horsepower.
Did you build this in a junkyard?
I built it entirely out of junkyard. That's the real skill.
So welcome to round 3 of inside the GT700. We're going to kind of dive right into the exhaust system because I built it in a completely different way than usual. Instead of a 4-to-1, this is actually a 4-2-1. And so each of the two rotors are combined on the 180-degree phasing. So it's like two rotors that have their own exhaust systems all the way out and then merge to an extremely large collector. So from an engine standpoint, it just thinks that each of the two rotors are into an open exhaust. They don't even relate to one another because the diameter is so large at the exit. This is something that I haven't really seen too many people do. It is the same way that Mazda on their IMSA GTO car did. They have two separate collectors with two separate mufflers all the way out the back. It's supposed to give a little bit broader a power band versus a 4-to-1, but at the cost of fuel economy. This is the main reason Mazda didn't do it on their 787B race car, because the fuel economy is so important. You can see the exhaust all V-band, 4-inch Borla mufflers that have had quite a bit of runs on them. I mean, we're talking years and years. This is the wideband that I run in the rear with a relocation to keep it from fouling out over long events. This is a shim and also a slightly additional heat sink to make sure the positioning is correct. So here's a rear view of the rear tires. This is a 325. I have ran up to a 345 before, and everything had to be tubbed out. Inside, and you can see the rear suspension. Again, the rear mount for the shock is all the way out to the outside. These are custom control arms on the rear as well. Maintain the same Mazda design with a multi-link, I guess you could call it. There's a drag link, which is an aftermarket aluminum piece, and then a fabricated steel lower arm here that ties it together to form an A arm of sorts. Tow rod is a off-the-shelf circle track tow rod that goes to Aurora bearings. Had machined adapters to fit it to a factory metric bolts on the Mazda ends here. Same with this one. These are machined adapters to run an Aurora bearing on an FD stock suspension mounting locations. And here is the monologue rear. This is the same design as the front, having 5 pin drives. Monologue hub. Same brake rotor, 1.25 inch thick. These are 2-piece rear calipers, but otherwise they're matched. You know, these are designed to work with each other. Both of these are off a prototype race car and adapted to the Rx7 spindle. So I'm still using a factory Rx7 hub, as you can see right here. Factory suspension mounting points, factory subframe that's just been reinforced. But it's all factory frame rails and everything through here. Stock Mazda rear end, which has 410 gears in it. No rear end cooler, which I need to add one because I'm pushing my luck. The differential's a COS 1.5 way. 13-gallon ATL fuel cell. I mounted it as close to the rear axle as you can get. Eliminating the factory sway bar actually allowed me to do that. That's a little trick that I did that pushed the weight closer to the center line of the chassis, and that helps with weight distribution. This is the fuel filter. It's all, has a protective sheathing that I fabricated, and also a mount. So it's quick release with a simple hose clamp for maintenance. The axles are aftermarket stub axles with factory CV joints. So the CV joint is still stock, but these are just oversized and longer to make up for the extra track width. I go through the factory joints every few races. They don't really hold up. I have to get a better solution going with an aftermarket company to replace. I wear out these CV joints, mostly this one, because you're exiting out of right-hand turns and the most stress is placed on the left rear tire. I was super fortunate again to find these wheels. These are Volk T37s, but only in the loosest term of the word. These are actually forged magnesium. That's where you get this forged mag sticker. And they're monolug. These are not 5-lug off-the-shelf Volks. These were run only on race teams in Japan for the Super GT. They had GT300 class and GT500 class. These came off a GT500 car. I'm not sure exactly which car. It's probably one of the Skylines or maybe the 350Z. And I was lucky enough to get my hands on a whole complete set that wasn't damaged. These are 12 inches wide in the front and 13 inches wide in the rear. And they're super lightweight. Weigh less than 20 pounds each. I can't remember the exact weight. I want to say they're close to 15 pounds each. Very lightweight, nice wheels. Having monolug just really set the look because I kind of wanted to emulate, obviously, a GT300 body like RMEO would have ran. This is the repaired and repainted rear fender, so it's not vinyl wrapped yet, but it's going to be soon. And these are the side skirts that kind of distribute airflow. Side vents, from behind the tire, you got a lot of air that's coming off there, so that kind of helps rejoin some flow, minimize turbulence. Comes along here. On the rear, did the same thing, half cut rear fender, so all the air from the rear tire is able to just escape. Now a lot of guys are asking me, why don't I have a rear diffuser? There's a few reasons I don't have a rear diffuser. Downforce in the rear is a lot easier to produce than downforce in the front. Even with this extremely advanced front splitter that makes a lot of downforce, it's still challenging to make as much front downforce as the rear. Now the wing is off of this currently, but it runs a really large GT wing from APR, the GT1000. It's able to make like 1,600 pounds of downforce at high speed. On my setting that I have it right now is probably in the vicinity of 1,000 pounds of downforce at about 150. So it's balanced as it sits. I can crank it up a little more in the rear, but really it's balancing the front. So if I had a rear diffuser, you're only going to gain more rear downforce. Some could argue a little less drag, but most likely it's not going to affect drag all that much. You're mostly just going to get more rear downforce, which would upset the balance of the car. Fiberglass doors. These doors are super lightweight. No mass to them. I got these years ago. I don't even know if you can get them anymore. But they're, maybe 10 pounds, 12 pounds each. Interior wise, running an aluminum spray seat from Kirky. I actually used to not like them until I looked into them further. They're really comfortable and extremely durable and really stiff, which when you start pulling lots and lots of G-forces, that becomes more and more of an issue. So here's the interior of the RX-7. I got a lot of tubing going on with crossing, trying to make as many triangles as I can to stiffen things up. I added a lot of these tubes later on with the new bodywork because, the deletion of some of the front frame rails, I wanted to regain some of the strength back into it. The cage ties into the unibody in a couple spots. So it ties in here, and it actually ties in right up here too, which is a direct path for the load of this bar. And these are the tubes that lead up to the upper bars that go through the engine bay. So I was just trying to tie those forces together. And then there's a dash bar that runs across way up front in front of the lower windshield. Then you have a lot of triangulation. So the tubing in the front engine bay that's diagonal meets to this bar. And I'm going to show you some photos of when I was fabricating all this so you really understand how it's working. But this is kind of a spine. This right here is a tubular structure. There's 2 tubes on each side. There's a lot of triangulation mixed in with this. So that whole tunnel is like a spine that goes up and attaches to the center of the dash bar. And so that's transmitting forces from the front shock tower to the center of this tubing. The center of this tubing is going to twin structure, I guess you want to call it, or spine is kind of what I'm calling it. Travels down and the forces meet at the rear, and it's going to be hard for me to kind of show this, which is why I'll have some photos, but they meet back here into this tunnel, and I reinforced it and then added a tube right here that goes up to the center of the roll cage, so those forces tie in and travel nice and through everywhere. Passenger seat has a Kirky too. It's in a little larger of a seat because there's, you know, I like taking passengers for rides. The steering wheel is a Sparco unit, quick release Sparco hub. Gauges, SPA for the 3 main ones on the tach speed, oil temperature, water temperature, oil temperature, oil pressure and volts, fuel level, AEM wideband to show my air-fuel ratio. And the steering, actually recently, I never had power steering on this car, but once I went to the bigger bodywork and the bigger tires, I was getting completely worn out. I mean, I couldn't race more than 1 day and I was done for it. So I had to come up with a solution. And what I did is add a Prius. So this is a Prius power steering unit, and it goes in the column. With it being power steering in the column, super easy to steer now. I can turn this with one hand, no problem. This is the pedal box. It is a stock Rx7 throttle pedal that I've added some aluminum onto. It brings it over a little bit so I can try to heel toe. I can't really heel toe, but I like to think I can sometimes. The brake pedal has adjustments, and it's kind of brought as close to the gas pedal as I can. And then that's a clutch pedal right there. With the brake pedal, this has the dual master cylinders, has a cable here that's running up, and this is the brake bias adjustment. So I put a little indication on there for more front or more rear brake. And then this is a simple switch panel. So transmission wise, I'm actually running a Sainz 6-speed sequential. They're the same company that makes transmissions for Formula One cars. I heard about them through a couple well-known racers, and they always had a good experience. So reached out to Sainz. They actually had a rotary transmission adapter plate that made it a real simple install. All I had to do was set up the annual release bearing, running a really lightweight 4-pound flywheel with a 5.5-inch quad disc clutch from Telton, and that allows extremely fast revs, which you guys probably seen in the videos before, how lightning fast the throttle response is on this car. Battery is relocated to the rear, which actually this car is rear heavy. Even though the engine's in the front, this has a 54% rear weight bias and a 46% front weight bias, so it's actually closer to a rear engine car on weight distribution. I think that kind of gives a nice edge. You can enter corners a little bit faster without experiencing any understeer, and you can exit a little harder with more rear weight. So probably one of the more unique things about this car is the custom wide body. I hand fabricated it out of aluminum. Initially I started with a wooden framework and applied construction paper onto it to sort of prove what it would look like and if the dimensions and everything could fit on the body. From there I took those paper templates off and had them scanned, and once they were done being scanned I was able to get them water jet cut out to save on having to hand cut each piece individually. After they're water jet cut, then I slip roll them and bend them in my brake, and then weld them together, TIG welded together. After it was all TIG welded, then I took it over to my body guy, and he was able to, do the final touches, because when you weld aluminum, it gets a little bit of imperfections. So he did all the body work and slight feller in some areas and prepped it to get, painted gloss black. So that's how the body came about. And that was my final vision for the GT700, and it was nice to see that all come together. At this point forward, I'm just focusing on developing it for the fastest speed on the racetrack as I can. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll try to have new videos coming out a little more often, and until next time.